This is how smart people treat toxic people, let's be honest. We've all had moments when someone drains our energy, pushes our buttons, or makes us question our worth. Toxic people come in many forms: the chronic critic, the manipulator, the emotional black hole. And smart people, truly grounded, self-respecting, emotionally intelligent people, handle them differently. Not with revenge, not with dramatic showdowns, not with the false high road of pretending everything's fine. Smart people handle toxic people by protecting their peace like it's sacred. Because it is. They set boundaries not to punish others, but to honor themselves. They know that love without respect isn't love. It's control. And connection without safety isn't connection. It's compromise. They don't engage in power struggles. They don't try to fix or change toxic people. Why? Because smart people understand one thing very clearly. Healing is a personal responsibility, and they've done, or are doing, the work to know what they deserve. They're not afraid to walk away, but when they do, it's not out of rage. It's out of clarity, out of self-respect. Smart people understand that cutting off toxicity isn't cruelty. It's courage. It's courage. It's choosing a life where you don't have to shrink or hustle to be accepted. So if someone in your life repeatedly drains you, disrespects you, or dismisses you, take a breath. You don't need to fix them. You don't even need to fight them. You just need to choose yourself. Because the smartest, bravest thing you can do is protect the space where your joy lives. We often think of toxic people as the obvious villains, loud, aggressive, or blatantly cruel. But in real life, toxicity is much more subtle and slippery. It doesn't always wear a mask of obvious harm. Sometimes it looks like the friend who always needs rescuing, the coworker who constantly undermines with a smile, or the family member who shames you with a just being honest. It's not always about what's said, it's the impact it leaves behind. And sometimes you don't even realize how deep the damage goes until you find yourself questioning your own worth in the quiet moments. Toxicity doesn't just come from what people do. It also comes from what they don't do. The person who never apologizes, the one who refuses to take accountability, the one who disappears when you need them most, but demands your full attention when they're in crisis. This passive form of toxicity can be just as harmful as open hostility because it erodes trust and safety over time. It's death by 1,000 little paper cuts, none fatal alone, but together they wear you down. Criticism is a classic form of toxicity, not the kind that helps you grow, but the kind that chips away at your confidence. It's the snide comment about your weight, the backhanded compliment about your success, the adjust playing devil's advocate that always somehow ends up making you feel small. Manipulation is another powerful toxic force. It's often wrapped in charm, cloaked in guilt, or disguised as concern. Manipulative people can twist your words, rewrite your memories, or weaponize your emotions. They'll use your empathy against you. You'll find yourself saying, "Oh, maybe I am overreacting," when in fact you're just reacting in a very human, very appropriate way. Smart people know to watch for not just what someone says, but what they do with your feelings. Then there's emotional volatility, the roller coaster of unpredictable reactions, explosive anger, or sudden coldness that leaves you walking on eggshells. When someone makes you feel like you're always one wrong word away from an outburst or an emotional shutdown, that's not passion. It's emotional instability. And when you constantly have to adjust who you are just to avoid triggering someone else's chaos, that's not love. It's survival mode. A particularly difficult form of toxicity is the "a nice toxic person." This is someone who appears kind on the surface, generous even, but their kindness comes with strings. Maybe they keep a mental scorecard. Maybe their help is transactional. Or maybe they use their niceness as a shield to deflect accountability. The most disorienting part is how everyone else might adore them, while you're left wondering if it's you who's being unreasonable. Toxicity also shows up in relationships where your boundaries are constantly crossed. When you say a no and it's ignored, when your silence is taken as consent, or when someone expects you to overextend yourself without question, it's a form of disrespect. It teaches you, over time, that your needs are optional and theirs are urgent. That's not mutuality. That's emotional exploitation. Finally, some toxicity doesn't come from intent at all. Some people aren't malicious. They're just deeply unhealed. Their wounds become patterns, their trauma becomes a lifestyle. But even then, the damage is real. Smart people understand that intentions do not erase impact. You can have compassion for someone's pain and still decide that their behavior isn't welcome in your life. Recognizing toxicity isn't about judgment. It's about discernment. Setting boundaries is not about building walls. It's about building clarity. Smart people understand that a boundary is not a rejection of someone else, but a recognition of their own limits. It's the internal line that says, this is where I end, and you begin. Without that line, it becomes far too easy to get lost in other people's expectations, moods, and chaos. Smart people don't wait until they're completely drained to speak up. They learn to recognize when their peace is at risk, and they act from that awareness. For emotionally grounded people, boundaries are not threats or ultimatums. They're invitations to healthier dynamics, to more respectful relationships, to more honest conversations. A boundary doesn't say you're bad. It says, this behavior doesn't work for me. That distinction is everything. Because when boundaries are set with love and firmness, they can actually strengthen connection or reveal where connection was never safe to begin with. The truth is, toxic people often rely on blurred boundaries. They thrive on guilt, obligation, or confusion. And when someone finally says a no, the backlash is often immediate. Manipulation, gaslighting, or withdrawal. Smart people don't let that reaction trick them. They know that someone's discomfort with a boundary is not proof that the boundary is wrong. It's often just proof that the boundary is finally working. Mental and emotional well-being is not a luxury. It's a foundation. Smart people treat their energy like a resource, not an endless supply. They know that every time they say yes to something that violates their values or capacity, they're saying a no to themselves. And over time, those tiny betrayals of the self lead to burnout, resentment, or emotional numbness. Boundaries then are not just protective, they're restorative. They help people stay whole. Boundaries also create emotional safety. When you consistently speak your limits, you teach others how to love you well. And you show yourself that your needs are worthy of protection. It's not about control, and it's not about being too sensitive. It's about refusing to participate in relationships where self-abandonment is the price of entry. Smart people would rather have fewer relationships that feel safe than many that leave them drained or disoriented. One of the hardest parts of setting boundaries is not the act itself. It's sitting with what happens afterward, the silence, the pushback, the guilt that creeps in. Smart people expect that discomfort. They don't interpret it as a mistake. They see it as growing pains, because it takes courage to choose your well-being over someone else's approval. It takes strength to disappoint others instead of continuously betraying yourself. Boundaries are not one-time declarations. They're daily practices. Smart people understand that setting a boundary is just the first step. Enforcing it is the real work. It means following through even when it's inconvenient. It means not explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. It means staying grounded in your truth, even when someone tries to make you feel like the villain for protecting your peace. Ultimately, smart people understand that boundaries are not a sign of disconnection. They are a pathway to true connection. Because real connection cannot exist without mutual respect, without autonomy, without consent. And if a relationship can't survive your truth, then it was never built on love, only on control. One of the most exhausting traps smart people avoid is the compulsion to fix other people, especially toxic ones. It often comes from a well-meaning place. Empathy, hope, love. We see someone's pain and think, and maybe if I love them harder, maybe if I'm more patient, maybe if I explain myself better. But over time, this hope turns into overfunctioning. And eventually it becomes self-sacrifice disguised as compassion. Smart people learn to recognize that healing, real, deep, meaningful healing, is an inside job. No amount of love, logic, or effort can force someone to change if they aren't willing to see themselves clearly. Trying to heal someone who refuses to take responsibility is like pouring water into a bucket with a hole in it. The more you give, the more depleted you become. And still, nothing fills. There is a big difference between supporting someone and saving them. Smart people draw that line carefully. Supporting says, I care about you and I'm here with you. Saving says, I'm responsible for your growth, and I'll suffer until you evolve. One is rooted in mutual respect. The other is rooted in control, even if unintentionally. Smart people know the difference, and they choose to stand beside someone, not lose themselves trying to carry them. It's tempting to confuse someone's potential with their pattern. Toxic people often show glimpses of who they could be. The tenderness after an outburst, the apology with tears, the I'll do better speech. But patterns tell the truth. If someone keeps hurting you, keeps crossing boundaries, keeps refusing to grow, then their potential is irrelevant. Word. Smart people stop waiting for who someone might become and start responding to who they consistently are. There's also something deeply humbling about realizing that no matter how much empathy we have, we cannot force someone to self-reflect. Smart people stop over-investing in someone else's breakthrough. They stop sending articles, having endless talks, or doing emotional gymnastics to get through. Because they understand change happens when someone is ready, and not a second before. And that readiness has nothing to do with how much you love them. Trying to fix toxic people often comes from a fear of loss. We think, if I don't keep trying, I'll lose them, or I'll feel guilty. But smart people face that fear head on. They understand that the cost of trying to fix someone is often their own peace, joy, and self-respect. They are willing to grieve what could have been in order to protect who they're becoming. They give up the illusion of control in exchange for the reality of freedom. And let's be honest, many of us were taught to equate love with suffering. We were told that loyalty means enduring someone else's pain, even when it's destructive. Smart people unlearn that belief. They understand that healthy love has boundaries. That being available is not the same as being responsible, and that you can care deeply for someone without abandoning yourself in the process. At the end of the day, smart people don't walk away from toxic people because they don't care. They walk away because they do. They care about their mental health, their emotional integrity, their future. And they know that loving someone doesn't mean saving them, especially when saving them would mean losing themselves. One of the most common misconceptions about boundaries is that they're harsh, that when we set them, we're trying to punish, control, or reject someone. But the truth is far more vulnerable and powerful. Boundaries are not about controlling other people. They are about taking responsibility for ourselves. Smart people know that a boundary doesn't say, "You're bad." It says, "I matter too." Boundaries are declarations of self-respect. They come from a deep knowing that our time, energy, and emotional bandwidth are not infinite and not up for negotiation. Smart people don't set boundaries to push people away. They set them to protect what's sacred inside themselves. And often that sacred thing is peace, clarity, safety, or dignity, all of which are non-negotiables for a healthy life. When someone reacts negatively to your boundary, that doesn't mean you were unkind. It usually means they benefited from your lack of boundaries. That's where a lot of confusion happens. People may say, "You've changed," or "You're being selfish," when in reality, you've just stopped saying yes when you meant no. Smart people recognize this not as a sign to back down, but as proof that the boundary is working. There's an emotional maturity that comes with learning to tolerate someone else's discomfort with your limits. Smart people don't collapse into guilt just because someone else doesn't like their boundary. They don't rewrite it, over-explain it, or apologize for it. Why? Because they've done the inner work to understand that self-respect is not cruelty, and prioritizing their well-being is not the same thing as being unkind. Boundaries can look like many things: turning off your phone after 9 p.m., not engaging in gossip, not loaning money, leaving the room when yelling starts, ending conversations when gaslighting begins. Smart people don't wait for these lines to be approved by others. They claim them clearly and consistently. The boundary isn't about what other people think. It's about what you know you need to stay grounded and whole. And here's something most people don't tell you. Boundaries don't need to be explained in detail. You can simply say, "That doesn't work for me," or "I'm not available for that," or even just a no. Smart people understand that clarity doesn't require over-justification. The more you try to explain or convince someone of your limits, the more you make them feel optional. And they are not optional. It takes courage to set boundaries with people you love, especially if those people are used to you being overly available, overly agreeable, or overly silent. Smart people face that discomfort with grace. They know that real love doesn't demand self-abandonment. And if a relationship can't survive your honesty and limits, then it was built on your compliance, not your full humanity. Ultimately, smart people don't use boundaries as shields. They use them as invitations, an invitation to relate differently, to create something more respectful, more honest, more sustainable. And if the other person can't meet them there, that's okay. The boundary will still stand, not as punishment, but as a quiet, powerful reminder that self-respect is not up for negotiation.